Welcome to The Decision from Nashville EO, where you will hear the rest of the story after tough decisions were made by entrepreneurs who faced adversity and lived to tell about it.
Hi, Robert Hartline here with The Decision, Nashville Entrepreneur Organization podcast on how we make decisions. The decision is that decision that we sometimes struggle with. We come to our forum for help with others' experiences so we can make that decision. This podcast was built upon the idea that many of us are in struggle with a particular decision. I could not tell you how many times I have been in forum and heard an entrepreneur give me the same deep dive or presentation that I've heard before. And they are struggling with that decision. This podcast is for us to explore different ideas and different strategies on how we can leverage forum to help us do that deep dive so we can actually get to that fundamental, important decision. I have a special guest with me today, David Florence. He is a YouTuber, a human energy architect, I like to call him. He runs a YouTube channel called Evolution of Dave, and I met him some months ago. And Dave, welcome to The Decision.
Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Good to have you here. You're all the way from the UK.
Yep. Lovely little town called Bradford-on-Avon, near to Bath, UK, which is, and I mentioned Bath because that's the place a lot of American folk would be aware of. Very sort of Georgian, beautiful, English-looking, atypical English-looking town.
It's funny. We're leaving the house, so Dave is staying with me. And we're leaving, and I'm leaving the house, and I shut the door, say, hey, can you press the pound button twice on the keypad? And he's like, what's the pound button?
Yeah.
And he calls it what?
A hash.
A hash. Yeah. It is a hash. I just always call it a pound button. But these differences kind of show up, right?
They show up a lot. And that's what's lovely about it, isn't it? Our idiosyncratic ways are oddities because we come from a different country.
Yep. And you know, it's funny because I discovered you when I was looking for some breathwork videos. I really had gotten into this breathwork thing as a way to ease my mind and anxiety. The tools that I used to use, I've stopped using those tools. Meaning I haven't drank in an awful long time, and I overused weed, as a mechanism to help my anxiety, and discovered that it wasn't working anymore, and started to pick up some breath work. And I ran into one of your videos, and I was like, that guy is doing something really cool. What made you get into breath work and this human optimization stuff?
Herein lies a story.
Here's the lines of the story,
which I'll keep short for the purposes of this conversation. So, back in 2017, I was running a small business, recruitment business, and we'd had a pretty terrible year financially. We had a fraudulent member of staff, and at the end of the year, we had our usual Christmas party. And the Christmas party, I drank a lot of alcohol. And at some point between midnight and the morning, something happened, and I still don't know what happened. But I was found by the side of the road, and I was sat with my butt, as you would say, on the path, legs in the road. And it was very strange because, and I've told this story so many times, but I was sat there, and I remember feeling absolutely fine. I was very happy there. Just chilling, thinking, I'll just rest here for a bit. And then every now and again, somebody would tap me on the shoulder and say, "Hey, you okay?" And I'd be going, "Yeah, what are you asking me that for? I'm fine." And anyway, sometime later, an ambulance then turns up and paramedics get out. And the first thing I say to them is, "Oh, are you lost? Can I help?" And they say, no, sir, we're here for you." And then they took their phone out, took a photograph of my head, and obviously I was covered in blood, and I didn't realize. And anyway, I was taken to hospital. It wasn't too bad an injury, but it was enough of a wake-up call. It was enough of a shock to the system for me to go, hang on a minute, this is not how a husband and father should act. Regardless of what happened, I've made a decision there at some point. I've made a decision to drink that next alcoholic drink. And I felt very guilty, and I went out into the garden. It was -10 in the garden, so it was the winter time. And I grabbed the garden hose, stripped off naked, and just stood under this hose for ages, freezing myself deliberately. And it felt amazing afterwards. And that became the catalyst for change. And I had been watching some videos on the Wim Hof method that wasn't particularly popular at the time. Wim Hof, I would imagine most people have heard of him now, the Dutch breather and Guinness World Record holder of various different feats of swimming under the ice and things like that. And I got into his breath work, and then this started my journey. I became quite evangelical about cold therapy and breathing practices. And of course, nobody would listen, because why would they? They knew me, the Dave of old. Why would they want to know that Dave has now changed his life and he's now feeling all this energy through doing these weird and wonderful practices? Why would they want to know about that? But at the same time, I then wanted to chronicle my journey, because I was feeling amazing. So I wanted to chronicle my journey on YouTube. So I created this YouTube channel, Evolution or Evolution of Dave. And then from then, people kept asking me questions as if I was an expert. They'd say, "Dave, how do you do this? How do you do this particular technique? Can you recommend something else?" And I began to realize that at the time, although I didn't consider myself an expert, I realized that I was to many. And so I became qualified in breathwork, and then flow state practice, clinical hypnotherapy, positive intelligence psychology, and various other things, and started to teach this on YouTube, and then realized it's time to bring this message out to, real human beings in the real world.
And I am a real human being that found you. So, I reached out, and we got on a couple of calls, and, I discovered really quick there was something here that you're doing. And I also realized that I'm not like a lot of people. I think a lot of people can be just okay with the way things are and use tools that are readily available, whether alcohol or medicines, to make their pain go away. And I'm more interested in figuring out why the pain is there and how to solve it for good, get to the root of the problem, and kind of, in that process of the breath work that I've been doing with you and other videos. And that is often in that practice of doing the breath work, a lot of things show up when you're doing the breath work that it's like clears the mind, and just things pop up. A lot of times, a lot of creative things and ideas, but also some really good realizations of why I act and do certain things through that breath work that tend to show up. The people that you tend to help, what do you notice about people these days that do reach out that get help from you?
Well, everybody's suffering. First off, we all are, to a greater or lesser extent. Usually most people are aware of anxiety and have suffered or are suffering with anxiety. Most people are aware of stress. And by the way, stress, of course, can be very good for us. As long as we allow time to recover and adapt, stress is actually very good, both psychological and physical. When we think of exercise, that's physical stress. And as long as we give ourselves, a day of rest, then our muscles grow. And it's the same for our brain. So that's the first thing I noticed, that everybody really is suffering. Everybody has a story. Most people don't know how to manage their energy levels. Most people don't know what to do when they're feeling low energy. And I think when it comes to us human folk, what we find when we're doing breath work or other alternative practices is that it's a doorway to getting out of our own way. And most of us live in this subconscious, routine-driven lifestyle where we're following the same path every day because our brains want us to do that. Our brains like it when it can, when our brains can predict the future. So if we follow the same routine, then our brains are happy. But deep down, we're not happy. Spiritually, we're not happy. Our inner wisdom is not happy because we're not following our purpose, our goals. We're not living in an energetic life. We're just simply being. And we're having, and I used to describe myself like this, actually, that I was letting life pull me along rather than me direct life. I wasn't grabbing hold of it and choosing where I wanted my life to go because, of course, just like everybody, if you're a parent and you're a working human being, you've got your daily routine of I've got to show up for work at 8 o'clock in the morning, got to finish work at 5 or 6. When I get home, I've then got the family to look after, and I've got other commitments on my mind, all that sort of stuff. And that then takes us out of this human existence. It sort of creates a... people talk about being in the matrix. I think part of that is us being in the matrix, isn't it? We're being blinded to what real life is. So when it comes to breathwork in particular, what that does and what you've experienced there is this, it gives you this doorway into removing the monkey mind, removing the mechanistic mind. In other words, everything that subconsciously drives us, and it reveals quite often the real us, the you. And that's when you talk about certain things show up for you during breath work or other practices, and that's a lot of what it is, isn't it? It's sort of let's remove the barriers, these psychological construct, these barriers that get in our way that stop us from being us.
What for me, the when you're doing the breath work and you're concentrating on breathing, the first thing I learned about breath work many years ago from a breath work practitioner is you can't do two things at once. And breathing in a certain way makes it very difficult to be thinking of other things. Mm-hmm. You really have to really pay attention to the breath work. And that is a meditative practice. It is a way to pull yourself out of that matrix mindset where your mind is just on this autopilot. And now you're like, all right, I'm controlling my breath. I'm being intentional about my breath holds. Oh gosh, this is hard holding my breath. And then, okay, I can relax. And you can start to discover that you can control not only your body, but your mind. And that realization is really rewarding, but it is a daily practice because if you do it like once, I hear people all the time, it's like, I did this breath work. It was amazing. Did you do it again? No. Why? Yeah, I mean, because, it is not a pill. A pill is easy, right? You can pop a pill and it's easy. The experience is auto for you, right? Automatically going to be done. But the breath work is some work. Mm-hmm. It's called breath work, work. But it is good work and it's valuable work. And once you get into the rhythm of it, it seems to help, And the reason I wanted to bring you, Dave, here to talk about is that energy has such an amazing influence to our decision capabilities. And the awareness of your energy, just knowing your energy level is really important, especially before an important decision. And I'll tell you a quick story. Years ago, I used to own a chain of wireless retail stores. And I used to have these 3 stores in Johnson City, Tennessee. Now, you don't know where that is, but it is 6 hours from Nashville. And I had these stores that I owned, and I had a night where I had been laid out with some friends drinking, and I had to get up early in the morning. So I was out late, early in the morning, hungover, driving a big box truck to go move some furniture. I was taking it out there. So I did this extra long trip, and this truck was really slow. So it wasn't just a 6-hour trip. It turned into an 8-hour adventure. But by the time I landed in that store, you know how those moments where you get with an employee that is just, you have the problems happen in threes, like nothing is working. So problem one, problem two, and then the final straw, that next, it's like they just happen in threes. I think I probably conjured up in my head that this is a thing for me. But I was so done with my day. And this employee, I don't really remember what he even said, but I was just, in my mind was this trigger. And the trigger was like, I got to get out of the store. I do not want to come to this part of Tennessee anymore. I am done with these stores. And what was weird about that particular situation, I used to have a Nextel store that turned into a Sprint store with a merger, but inside the shopping center was another Sprint store. And there was one store empty in between these two stores. So I was competing with Sprint, another dealer, for this location. And they weren't willing to tell one of us to kick out, to leave. And so I was in a state of low energy. I'm leaving leaving the store. I happened to see the area manager from the competing store. And I literally just walked up and said, "Are you the area manager here?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "I think we're leaving. I'm going to let you have the store." And I just gave him that store. I literally gave that store away. And what's really crazy is I used to get all the metrics from all the dealers so I could see how well these stores did. That store netted over $1 million a year for the next 8 years. I gave away a kick-ass opportunity, all because I had low energy. And that was one of the tells for me to stop drinking. We all have a thing that will show up, a bump on the head, something that is like, wait a minute, Robert, what are you doing with yourself? This drinking thing. And that was around the time that I heard a statement from a friend of mine that was also an entrepreneur, but she had been away from alcohol for 20-something years. And she said to me, says, "Alcohol steals happiness from tomorrow." And it is so true.
I like that.
And it's that low energy that caused me to make a really rash decision. Now, in hindsight, I could have sold that location. We could have made some arrangement. We could have made that work. But I had used all the power in my mind for rational thought, and I just gave up. So what are some ideas that one could use to really help in a situation like that? Like going back to that, what could I have done? Obviously, I could have not drank the night before, but what do you do when you're in that kind of situation where you're just kind of in that give up stage?
Well, first of all, I just wanted to say something that really sprung to mind there was that most people have a means to change their state via something that is easily accessible, like alcohol, like energy drinks. You mentioned that earlier today. It's not necessarily that they're necessarily bad. There are, I'm sure, some healthy energy drinks. I had a strong black coffee this morning. There are so many things that we have in our lives now because of this Western world creation of things that are immediate to us to change. We want to, I'm feeling a bit low in energy. What can I do? Oh, quick coffee, or I'm going to eat some chocolate, or, it's all here in front of us, isn't it? And this is the thing that we're almost sort of fighting the world that we've created ourselves, that is meant to be designed to make our lives easier, that is supposed to give us access to this incredible life because we can just buy something and it's here, a few hours later. So we've all got access to these things that will change our state, that are usually things that we either consume or buy, and they work. But they generally only work for a brief period. And it's a bit like with sugar, isn't it? We get this immediate high from this state-changing experience, just like with alcohol. And then there's always a negative result afterwards, both from alcohol, sugar, anything really, because that you're changing your state so considerably from the neurochemical perspective that your body afterwards says, okay, well, I've just given you a dump of serotonin or a dump of dopamine. I now need to restore that neurochemical balance. So now you're going to have to go through another period of low. And of course, when we have that low, again, we then have that psychological thought of, oh, what can I do to get me out of this low? That's really easy. And I suppose this is it. Sort of the weakening of the modern mind is such that we think we can just solve our problem like this. We don't commit to anything. We don't create disciplines. And going back to the point you made earlier, breathwork works, meditation works, mindfulness work. They all work, but only if you commit to them. You create the discipline. And only when you create that discipline does it then reflect and ripple out into other areas of your life. So let's go back to the question you've just said there. What can you do when you feel those low energetic states? Well, first off is awareness, isn't it? It's, are you aware of when you're feeling low? Quite often we live this life in a subconscious fashion. And it's almost like, oh, there's no awareness of feeling low. It's just simply like a sort of reaction, a reactive process, isn't it? Because we know we have access to this stuff that will just change our state very quickly. So I think the first thing is awareness, and maybe awareness from the perspective of, why am I feeling low? Well, if you've just run a marathon, then it's fairly justifiable. You're going to be feeling pretty rubbish, afterwards, in terms of you will have had the endorphin rush, and then at some point you'd have the low because your body needs to replenish the neurochemicals. It needs to rest. It needs to recuperate. If, like you've said, you've had a really good night the night before on alcohol, then of course there's a reason why you feel pretty rubbish the next day. So there's the awareness. And then second to that is starting to build into your life practices that can change your state positively. But there's no point waiting for the times in your life when you're feeling rubbish to activate these practices. Because when you're feeling rubbish, your mind is not working in an efficient way. You're not utilizing your intelligent brain. Quite often you're using your Neanderthal brain, your basic brain, because you're in fight-flight response. So, you're in such a low state that actually the brain can't come up with solutions. So really what you want to do is to bring into your life daily practices. There's short breathwork practices, for example, that I teach, and these that take 1 or 2 minutes, and they completely give you a shot of energy. There's one that I've created for a breath app called Your Morning Breath Coffee. A minute later, you're full of energy. There are other practices that will put you in a calm state. But equally, one of the things that we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? Around exercise. And quite often I think, especially go-getters, entrepreneurs, they have a very good routine. And quite often it's the morning when they do, an hour down the gym. And that's brilliant. Nothing wrong with that. But I wonder, maybe you could start creating a routine in which you build in 1 or 2 minute exercises that raise your heart rate. Because whenever we do that, if we've been sat in front of a computer all day and we're feeling low, well, no wonder you're feeling low. You've been sat on your bum for too long. You've been staring at a screen for too long. Of course, you're going to feel low. But if you've already got in your mind a toolbox of practices such as, I've been doing this for an hour. I'm now going to do something that will counter that. So I'm now going to do some squats for a minute. That will raise my heart rate, push the oxygen around the body. Automatically, I now feel amazing again. So I think, in your situation you just described there, had you had the awareness of what that was before you made that decision, you could have done something. But you're only going to do that if you've been practicing this every day, because it won't appear in your mind when you're feeling low unless it's a part of your existence, a part of how you live.
And, when you're in that low state, you are not thinking logically. And that's the biggest challenge of it all, is that the fact that you can't conjure up a solution that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And you often are grasping at anything that often is negative.
Yeah, you go for the quick fix.
Yeah. And this is really good, because this idea of specifically in the breathwork category, it really kind of came up. When I first met you, we did some calls together, and I invited you on a whim to Costa Rica. And you were like, "Oh, here's this American, I don't know who he is, like inviting me with his friends, entrepreneur friends in Costa Rica on this entrepreneurial retreat." And I was the same way. I was like, "I don't know, is this a good idea, bad idea?"
But do you remember a few days in, you said, when we were walking on the beach, you said, "It's only just dawned on me, this could have gone really bad."
It could have gone really bad, right? Exactly. And that would have been weird, having to kick you out of our place. Yeah. But it worked out beautifully. And I just knew instinctually, for whatever reason, you can tell you care about your health. And that, our body is a way for us to communicate our love of life, right? When we are really connected with conversation, and we're talking about life things. And this is what I get in EO. I get this feeling of this group of entrepreneurs really are excited about life, doing challenging things, stretching their strengths over and above what they're even capable of sometimes, so that they can learn to realize they can go to that next level. And that's part of it, being in that flow state, is when you challenge yourself and overcome a hard thing, it actually gives you that surge of energy to go to that next thing. And that's how I think that the process to happiness is through doing hard things and challenging ourselves. And it was, for me, I looked at inviting you as a challenge, A, and B, how to integrate you with my friends and how that would look, and where I knew there was a real opportunity in. So when you bring people together, people are coming from different places and have their own states that they're bringing into a room. Okay, some of my friends still drink, right? And they're in different levels of energy with themselves, right? But one thing I learned early on that we did in our retreat is having you lead breath work before we actually started a conversation. So before dinner, we had people, we had a team of people making us dinner, but we would actually do breath work before we'd start a conversation. And it really got us in sync. And I feel like that is a great opportunity for a forum to get in the habit of, before you start your forum meeting, if you have a forum meeting at 8:00 in the morning and you're in Nashville, Tennessee, guess what? You just experienced some stress. You were in traffic, right? You had to race the kids off to school. And then you're coming in with this state of, well, I don't want to be in that state. I want to be in a creative state. I want to open up my mind to new ideas. I want to be listening. I don't want to be distracted about the worries of what's going on outside that meeting. And so getting us to breathe together before the meeting adds a complete different level of connection than it would if you just drop into that stress zone.
Yeah. I as we know, certain practices work, and they do work at getting people on the same page mentally, psychologically, we all have things going on in our mind. You know, our monkey mind is driven in this way to keep reminding us of tasks in the future, to keep reminding us of problems in the past. And so whenever we turn up to a meeting, whenever we turn up to friends, you know, even a bar, we're going to be turning up with our own luggage, our own baggage, rather. So a really good practice that you and I have done, I have taught it in various other corporate settings, is a practice called dolphin breaths. And the beauty with dolphin breaths, it's really just 3 inhale holds over a specific time period. The great thing about this practice is that it increases your carbon dioxide in the body. And carbon dioxide, for the most part, what I was taught at school was that carbon dioxide is a waste gas. It isn't. It has a crucial relationship with your oxygen in the body. You need both. And you need a certain level of carbon dioxide for the oxygen to actually be transported to the body, into the tissues. If you increase carbon dioxide by holding your breath, you actually have this calming effect on the mind and the body. And so it's really good if you get everybody together to do this particular breathing practice, which only takes 3 minutes. You are effectively getting everybody in a similar state because you've calmed their mind, you've calmed their body by increasing carbon dioxide. And so at least then you know when people show up for this meeting that they're no longer in this state of what I've got to do afterwards, what I've done before. They're in this state of the now, the present. And when we're in the present, when we're in the now, and we know that those that are listening to us are also in the present, in the now, conversations flow. If we want to strategize, you know, we're in an EO meeting and we want to strategize, isn't it better to know that everybody is present without thinking about other stuff, without thinking about stuff in the future? So yeah, that is a really simple practice that everybody should start every single team meeting, because it's so easy to do, easy to remember, and it works.
Yeah, we've been doing it, you know, just for the audience here. Dave is a fractional integrator for my EOS practice. And we use this strategy for our level 10 meetings. We, in fact, the first 10 minutes of our meeting is this. And, you know, we've started to talk about setting up calls beforehand where everyone just puts it on their calendar to do this breathwork audio or video 10 minutes before the even meeting starts. So everyone can just come in and drop into that meeting just super connected. But it takes practice. It takes commitment from everyone to think outside the box. I mean, the way I look at it here is, and why I think it's important, is when you bring together a group of people and they're going to do their EO forum experience, and you're going to invest the time with other people that are with an extremely busy schedule, why not make the most of that experience? Maximize all that there is in that. And one of the other practices I want to highlight is this practice called the gamma mindset that we did. Explain how that works and the psychology behind the gamma mindset.
At first glance, it can appear a little bit strange, can't it? In terms of what it is that you would do in this practice. The whole idea of the gamma mindset is you are applying emotion to an intention. And the only way the way I tend to describe this is so that it sort of makes it a little bit more real and justifiable to those listening. Whenever you've been backed into a corner and you've had to make a decision, and in this moment you've realized that decision was the only thing you could do, but it was going to be a really hard decision, and it would be one that others might perceive as odd, strange, worrying. It would be one that you yourself would think, maybe it's going to take a lot out of my life to make this decision. It's going to be really challenging. It's going to be really hard, but I can't do anything else. If I need to get myself out of this hole, I have to make this decision. And the power and the energy behind that is often emotive. In other words, especially if it's linked to your family or, if it's linked to your business. And this emotion that's driving that decision is powerful. Now, whenever you then make a decision that's driven by a higher energetic emotional state, so when we talk about energy and we talk about the energy of emotion, then the emotion of joy or love is the most powerful. And we know that, whenever if you were the person that made the initial move towards asking another person to marry you, you know that emotional energy was very powerful. So what this does is brings you to a point where you imagine an image of an experience or a person that automatically in your mind and your body creates that emotion of either joy or love. So for me, when I'm doing this practice, all I've got to do is close my eyes, think of my son, and boom, I have this incredible feeling of love. And what you're then doing is once you've conjured that image and you really make it come alive, you make it visceral because you've got your eyes closed and you're being guided by me or you're listening to an audio of my voice. And you're making all the colors come alive. This picture, this image of whatever it is that you're thinking of is real. Then what you're doing is you are applying that emotion to an intention, and it could be anything. Now, this practice was originally designed for working on self-limiting beliefs. We all have these self-limiting beliefs, and it's a really good practice for that. But it can be an intention for your business. It can be an intention, as we talk about with the Sales Hustle, one of the programs that we've got working for salespeople, is it could be an intention about how you're going to succeed that day, how you're going to achieve something in that day. Then what you do is you're in this state of visual emotion. You're feeling the emotion through your body. And then what you do is you cross your arms and you cross your legs. And there's a very good reason why you do that. And I guess an easy way to describe that is that you're hacking the brain, you're rewiring the brain. And it seems very strange to do that, but by crossing your arms and crossing your legs, you are effectively affecting your left and right hemisphere of the brain. And you then, with the emotion still in your mind, you then apply an intention. And it's a bit like a mantra, isn't it? You in your mind, you're repeating a statement, whatever that statement might be. And it's a very positive statement, something like, I look forward to waking up tomorrow with energy. And then you're saying that sentence over and over again. Now, typically you will say that sentence in your mind for about a minute. When you practice this on a daily basis, you're doing it up until the point when you notice a physical sensation in your body, because you will notice that. And that will be your body saying, yep, got it. That's logged. That intention is now logged in the brain. Tomorrow you are going to wake up with energy. And that's it. That's the practice done.
What's crazy about that is the setting the intention with using the gamma and using this higher level of frequency of love, right? Has been amazing when I've used it. When I've gotten the habit of, for a period of time, I was doing it daily, and I had the longest stretch of happiness I've had in a long time. And it is incredibly powerful. I will add a link into the YouTube comment section. So if you guys were interested in practicing this, you could do this. This higher level of frequency work, a lot of people talk about Joe Dispenza. And a lot of EO members may not know this, but EO has a separate My EO section on the website where you can join a Joe Dispenza EO group. And actually in Cape Town, we actually did a Joe Dispenza walking meditation, but that's the work he teaches in this living in this higher level of frequency. Because sometimes we are in that low level of frequency, the shame, the guilt, right? And what is that like to live in a world where you have that shame and guilt? You can't make good decisions in that scarcity mindset. When you're in that world, and that's why I tell everyone that that manages salespeople, if you are in a scarcity or feeling guilty or shame, you can't manage salespeople because they need energy, and you're going to affect the rest of your team when you come with that level of energy. Same with an EO forum experience. You come in there with a bad attitude before you start your forum experience, and you're going to affect other people in that room. But, usually I don't ever see that in a forum experience because I'm always looking forward to getting together, connect with people, hearing what's going on in everybody's world. Because I get a lot of energy from that group of people because they're generally good, positive people, or they would not be in business. You don't see successful, negative people in business.
It's funny that. Yeah, you're right.
They just don't exist. Now, I'm sure there's a few that could be a little bit negative, or they could have a life event that could take them to that state. A divorce, or the business is failing. What do you see has worked for people that are on this track where, they're discovering that the things they're using today aren't serving them to get them in the state and the place they need to be? What creates the discipline to continue to do these types of practices? Because to me, it's the disciplines that you get the reward. You don't get the reward after doing it once.
Yeah. There is no one pill.
Yeah.
There is no one practice.
Yeah.
And I think herein lies the problem in this world that we've created, of which, I'm not downing the world that we've created. We've created many good things. We've created many positive things. But I think if we all lived in a cave and meditated every day, we wouldn't be having this conversation. We've created too many distractions that can, take us away from the path that we should be on. So discipline. One of the things so let me tell you my story where I created a discipline and it had this ripple effect on the rest of my life. Creating a discipline, I think, that works often comes from making yourself do something hard. And David Goggins, who people will be familiar with, he's a very verbose, gregarious chap, does cuss a lot, yeah. But he describes it as callousing the mind, and I really like that description. And for me, initially, when I got into cold therapy, stepping into ice baths or cold showers every day, that calloused my mind, because regularly, initially, it doesn't happen now, my mind would on some mornings say, let's just not do it today. I don't feel up to it today. And I remember consciously saying, no, stuff that, I'm going to do it anyway. And you do enough of that. In other words, you do enough of having that back chat with your mind of, no, I'm ignoring you. You do that enough, a few weeks down the line, that becomes a discipline then. So you're making yourself do the hard thing. Unfortunately, there isn't a quick route to this beyond something like that. Make yourself do the hard thing for a period of time, and then that hard thing no longer becomes hard. And what you'll find is by making yourself do it, that discipline you've created is then happening elsewhere in your life. And you don't realize it until you go, hang on a minute, a year ago, I would have given up that idea. A year ago, I wouldn't have continued doing that. And I've only just realized I've been doing that every day for the last 6 months without thought, without question. So that's one thing I would say. The other thing is, of course, there are tricks which do work. One of them being the habit stacking method, which is a brilliant way of creating a discipline. And the way you do that is it's a way of manipulating your mind, really. It's making use of your mind when it's in a malleable state, when it's in a suggestible state. So we all have a healthy habit that we do every day without thought. We don't question it, just like brushing our teeth or having a shower. We do that. We all do that. We wake up, we do exactly that thing, but we don't ever question it because our brain has accepted that that is a good thing to do. It's a healthy thing to do, and there's no point questioning it. Your brain isn't going to question that. It's going to do it. Unless, of course, you're an 8-year-old like my son. Then it might well question it. But as adults, we don't question that. So what you're doing is when you are brushing your teeth or you're having a shower, you then in your mind, you say, after I have brushed my teeth or had a shower, I'm then going to ... whatever the thing is that you want to build into your life that's a healthy discipline. And really what you're doing is you're playing with the mind. You are using your mind or making use of it when it's in this accepted state, when it's in a malleable state. The brain is already kind of almost switched off because it's going, yeah, this is what we do every day. We have a shower. And all you're saying is to your brain, look, after we've done this, why don't we just do this as well? So the brain's going, yeah, fine, yeah. And I have this conversation with my brain all the time, by the way, as you know. I do treat it like a friend. So that would be another great way of building in a discipline. Just add that thing that you want to do. It could be doing push-ups every day. It could be after your teeth brushing, you want to have a cold shower. So that would be a great way of building a cold shower habit discipline into your life, would be to say that in your mind every time you're brushing your teeth. After I've done this, I'm having a cold shower. And the brain won't question it as much.
Yeah, and the callousing the mind has showed up for me big time, especially the cold shower thing. Because you're just like, oh my gosh, I do not want to feel this sensation. And the sensation, if you haven't started a practice of cold showering, I feel a natural high after a cold shower every single time. But that moment before you step in, when you first started, it's so like, I do not want to do this. And then when you do it, and then it feels so amazing. What I have seen, that callousing the mind is so true, because you're going to be faced with an uncomfortable conversation that you could either put off or just tackle and face the fire and step into the danger zone and just say what needs to be said. It needs to be said. We all know it needs to be said. Get it out there. Or it's that call, that phone call, that prospect that you need to call that you're putting off for some reason. That shows up a lot in sales teams is not making that next call because that anxiety. It's the same feeling that happens before you walk into that cold shower. And so it's just a matter of just stepping into it and doing it. And it just seems to stack upon itself to the actual benefits. Like once you get the momentum going in your life where things are starting to work, then you're just, it's the momentum is so powerful on your energy when you are actually doing the maintenance work to get the energy where it needs to. But it does take a bit of time and energy for you to be engaged with getting that energy at a certain level. Well,
also, I think you've just hit upon something just then, actually. Let's think about all EO members. They're all disciplined. So everybody has, this whole audience has discipline. Else they wouldn't be in EO.
Right.
They wouldn't be successful entrepreneurs.
Correct.
So we need to be kind to ourselves and remind ourselves that we are perfectly capable of creating a good, healthy discipline because we've done it elsewhere. We just had an intention elsewhere that's different to this one. In other words, my intention is to grow this business and I'm going to do it via whatever the hell, means I can. And so so when you consider that is just simply the intention behind it, isn't it? My desire is to grow this business, to be successful. Well, why not flip that to, or use that same methodology, that same psychological idea to, my desire is to use this discipline to feel better, to feel energetically better, to be able to make better decisions.
And it's important to note that this is not the important decisions for the business, because these are important decisions about what shows up when we get home from work. When we are drained from our day, we're not powered through love. We're not powered through an emotion to do things from our heart. We get so caught up in our mind that we show up to our kids and we are short. We are unloving, right? We are tired. We are exhausted. And, it's one of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast is not that I'm the expert, because I am not. I want to learn. I want to learn how to do and make better decisions about whether it's my morning routine, whether it's the way I interact in my forum. It's the way I work with my staff. And I understand that my energy is multiplied through my team. And if I'm running at a -5, multiply -5 times 5 people. I mean, that's what's going to happen, because you're going to get in a meeting and I'm going to create that negative multiplication effect. But I could multiply in a positive. And the same with coming home from work, and understand my kids could be in a negative space and they're going to come around me. And it is my job as father to be aware of my own energy, be aware that I have influence with my energy for them. And it's a multiplication effect just at home, because I could And we all have seen this. You've been around a negative person that's on your team through some conversation, the right questions. You can turn their negative energy around. You can change their mood through conversation. And that's the power of good leadership for us. And it's to be aware, right? Be aware your state of your energy. Be aware that you can change that. But it's when we are living in that world, we're in the matrix and we're stuck, and it's just how do we get out of those kind of things?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And I think for most people, they need the bang to the head. They need a slap in the face.
That would be pretty simple. I mean, you could just slap someone upside the head and just hope for the best.
Maybe that's how you should start every meeting.
It would at least get their attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Dave, thank you for joining us here at The Decision. Couple of messages I want to shout out to the Nashville EO community. The Decision is here for you. I would like to hear stories of a decision that you had in the past that you would like to share on our podcast. We can keep the names and the details out of it. But what I'm hoping to do through our podcast is to share challenging stories of entrepreneurs that have been through hard times and have lived to tell the tale. If you have that type of story, please reach out to us. We'd love to have you on the podcast so you can share that story, because I want someone to be able to find that story and see how it could resonate with them, to help them understand that they can live through a very difficult decision. And then this podcast is to teach other EO members how to leverage EO Forum to help them with these challenging decisions, with these challenging moments in our lives, and realize that things do get better. Thanks for watching The Decision.
Thanks for listening to the Decision Podcast by Nashville EO. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.